Hello, my name is Eliza, and welcome to the Eliza Bleu podcast. I'm a survivor advocate for those affected by human trafficking, and I am also a survivor of human trafficking. Today, we have one of my favorite tech creators, someone who I think is a genius already. Right off the bat, I think this individual is a genius, a really great person, the CEO of Odyssey, Julian. Odyssey, I guess, should I say odyssey.com or just Odyssey?
Whichever you like, odyssey.com, it's fine. But holy shit, Eliza, that's a massive, that's awesome praise. That's huge praise. I don't think I'm worthy of that.
You are, because, I've said multiple times on Twitter and in other places as well, that I believe that Odyssey is the platform of the future. I believe that it is the future. Why don't you explain to folks? You're so humble, I can tell already. You know, when people give me compliments on podcasts, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's like best start basking in the light. You like got all humble and everything. So that's cute. So why don't you explain to folks what Odyssey is?
In the simplest terms possible. It's a video sharing platform that's built on the blockchain, something comparable to YouTube. And what we're trying to do with Odyssey is we're creating a platform for the younger generations. People like our age, we're already rooted in the apps that we use, like YouTube and Instagram and that sort of thing. And a lot of the alternatives that are coming out on the market today, they're kind of targeted towards a specific demographic. Odyssey is kind of a revival of the spirit of social media, independent content creation. And that's what Odyssey is about. Answer your question.
Yeah, I think that's great. Where did you come up with the idea to start Odyssey? And am I right? Did you come from TikTok previously?
I did. So I was living in Shanghai and I was working for TikTok. And my role there was to take the product to Australia and New Zealand and help grow it there in those markets. I wanted to stay in Shanghai, but it didn't work out because of the coronavirus and that kind of thing. Found myself back in New Zealand. I'm originally from New Zealand, and I was always interested in alt tech, right? So I wrote to Jeremy Kaufman, who the co-founder and CEO of Library. He was building this blockchain. He had a front end called Library TV. By front end, I mean website, and it was doing okay, but my general impression of alt tech platforms at the time, there was Library TV, there was BitChute, and there was Rumble. They all looked like they should have been run by politicians rather than, people interested in tech or media professionals and that sort of thing. So my idea when I spoke to Jeremy was like, hey, this is my background. This is what I do. This is what I'm passionate about. And I went into detail about creators and content and the type of content that people want to support. I said, hire me and let me create something that we can scale and that will appeal to everybody, not just one side of the political dichotomy. And he was on board with that, fully on board, in fact. And then he trusted me to work on Odyssey. And so that's essentially how we got building Odyssey, and then we officially launched that back in December 2020.
So how long did you work previously for TikTok? I go back to TikTok. I just think that's interesting. I don't know why. I don't know why I think the TikTok thing's interesting. It's just, how long had you been in tech previously, I guess?
In general, prior to TikTok, I had my own startup that was based in the F&B industry, like just working with food. And then actually I held business roles prior. So I didn't fully get into tech until I had my own startup and then began working for TikTok. And then now I am here with the biggest blockchain media company in the world. But I like to see myself more, first and foremost, as a media professional versus a tech professional. Don't get me wrong, I work in the tech industry and I am a tech professional, but in the same way, I think we should put the product first and the tech kind of becomes secondary. It's like when you're driving a car, you're not really thinking about the specifics of how the engine works and operates. So when you're looking at Odyssey, I can go into detail about the blockchain, the tech stack, and all of these kinds of things. But first and foremost, I think it's important to emphasize that we're an entertainment or media platform first.
One thing that I think, well, I absolutely love Odyssey. I love, I know this is going to sound so plebeian, but I love the graphics and the little cartoons. It just aesthetically, I love like logging in. I love the way it looks. I love everything about it. But for folks that don't understand the need for platforms like Odyssey, why should content creators be choosing a platform like Odyssey as opposed to YouTube? Just personally, I can speak from my personal experience. Before I started my own podcast, instantaneously when my name or anything with my name and human trafficking was added to my podcast interviews, they were demonetized for the individuals where I was going on. And it's not like I'm somebody that uses a ton of foul language in my podcast. I don't talk about, COVID or my views on anything like that. I'm solely talking about, generally speaking, it was pretty much just my experience, strength, and hope. And those podcast interviews were getting demonetized. And that's where, when I started to think to myself, okay, now I want to start my own podcast, I knew that that my own podcast wouldn't do well on YouTube. So I looked for other platforms like Odyssey, and I can honestly say that just I'm a few podcasts in now and the numbers are insane. Odyssey hasn't been pulling me down in the algorithm. I can tell this, so that's what's worked out well for me with Odyssey. Why would someone choose Odyssey as opposed to some of the more legacy tech platforms?
I mean, I think a lot of the rationale is kind of, you just kind of described through your own personal example.
Yeah.
YouTube as a platform, it's no longer interested in being YouTube anymore, right? It's focused on like the acquisition of corporate big media personalities. You go to the front page and you see, Jimmy Fallon and other big primetime talk show hosts. It's focused on promoting that corporatist big media content. It doesn't want to be YouTube anymore. It's like it wants to be like legacy cable TV. With Odyssey, what we're essentially saying is, hey, you're just a regular person. You like to make content. Well, come along and create that content because that's what we're all about. And that was the original message of what YouTube used to say, right? Back in the day, during the golden years. So we're just saying the same thing. So if you're a creator that you're concerned about being algorithmically demoted or concerned about having to compete with, already YouTube priority creators that are already established and such, come to Odyssey. Let's build an organic audience together. And, this can be for us. We don't have to worry about, competing with all the big media personalities. Similarly, like you could look at something like Rumble. You go to the front page, it's plastered with Fox News TV personalities or establishment conservative social media personalities. Odyssey certainly has some of those personalities, but that's not the bulk of what we have. We pride ourselves in having regular creators and regular voices. In the case of your show, I remember talking to my team, Drew and Eliza and Lauren about this. You as somebody you had a very important message, and a lot of people would find that very interesting. Just unfortunately, you can see why it would be problematic for mainstream platforms to post.
What happened, and unfortunately, I stepped forward in April 2020 to become a public survivor leader. And what really worked against me when it comes to legacy tech is that was at the same time that QAnon sort of, I don't really know. I don't want to go into that nightmare, but they had a big pocket of the internet and were really. So what essentially happened on a lot of the legacy tech platforms is that they really pulled down in the algorithm words like child trafficking, human trafficking, on certain legacy tech platforms, even the word slavery, so if is almost completely shadow banned out down. So even if I'm using words that we would normally use to speak about this very real issue and this very serious crime, I'm pulled down in the algorithm because of others, like just dumb mistakes. And it kind of stinks, but I found ways around it. But it just really made me realize that, because I don't really talk about politics too much, but I could understand how different. One thing that you said to me, and this is actually why I wanted to interview you, and I didn't tell you this previously. There was a moment when you and I were talking on the phone, and there was something that stood out to me very vividly. You said that Odyssey has had some human rights activists that have found it. And I found one thing along my journey is that human rights activists, specifically for, like Chinese Uyghurs, got to be very clear with that one, with the Chinese Uyghurs that, and then also too, I found along my journey with MENA activists, sometimes on the legacy tech platforms, they are also demonetized and pulled down for various reasons. And I thought it was cool that you said that to me. I was like, oh, that's awesome that they're finding a home on platforms like Odyssey. Is that something that you'd like to see more? Is more human rights activists?
I mean, absolutely. The way I see Odyssey is that it needs to be as close to a public space as possible. And it will mean different things to different creators, right? Like, or different personalities. So for those artists and those, creators in the vein of, Filthy Frank or personalities like them, we are what YouTube used to be. We could be like Adult Swim or old MTV. For people that are politically minded and that kind of thing, we are, was it Speaker's Corner? I forget the name. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Yeah, it's Speaker's Corner. I'm pretty sure it is. So whatever your political ideology is or belief, or come along and discuss it. So yeah, we definitely want to see more of, various voices coming onto the platform. Whether they're oppressed, whether they're marginalized or whatever, absolutely. The main thing is creating a non-polarizing open space in the first place. And that's very difficult to do if, as a business, all of our actions are centered around, just creating, a monoculture. So, that's why we can get, some of those, you mentioned Uyghurs and other minority type of voices.
That makes me so happy. That I don't know. There was something about that just makes me so happy when different activists have an opportunity to find a voice, or, because I've always been an American and I'm an American survivor of human trafficking. So me speaking out about these things isn't that difficult, but there are so many individuals from so many different countries that don't have that much of an opportunity. Do you think that Odyssey is a good place for folks that maybe want to remain anonymous or have a veil of protection as creators?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can create channels on Odyssey, which would give them the ability to hide away, especially if they've got some, important messages that would come under scrutiny or attack. I mean, that's one of the benefits of free speech, is that, you can protect a marginalized voice in that way.
That's another thing that's really important to me too, is, sometimes people are like, oh, we need to, I don't want to dog out Jordan Peterson because everybody knows I love Jordan Peterson, but he went on a little sort of a tweet storm the other day saying that he wants to not have anonymous profiles on Twitter. And I was like, anonymous, the ability to remain anonymous is so crucial, especially in what I do, because I sort of can bleed over to the activist, human rights activist space. But I mean, for a survivor to potentially be on these platforms and to remain anonymous and still have their story be heard, that's so important. And same thing for other individuals as well. I think it's really, really important to have that ability to remain anonymous. And I just feel like Odyssey could do that. So can you do me a favor? Because I'm kind of I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. So can you explain a little bit blockchain and the Odyssey blockchain decentralized? Please make that make sense for me.
Yeah, let's
explain that for me.
Yeah, let's keep it simple. I'll demystify it.
Okay.
But I don't want to go too in detail because it'll just be way too complicated, and I don't mean that in a condescending way. It's just let me give you a version that people can understand. So Odyssey, it's built upon decentralized technology. It's built upon a blockchain called Library, LBRY. And essentially all the videos that are on Odyssey, the metadata for all of that is hosted on that blockchain. So what that means for someone like yourself, Eliza, or any other creator that's on Odyssey, if we change the rules on you, like let's say we go rogue, like I become totally evil and I'm like, no, we need to start censoring, we need to just abandon all our core values. Or Odyssey gets shut down for whatever reason. You still own your content. It's still yours. You can do whatever you want, and it still exists on that blockchain. So somebody can come along and create a new front end, like a new website, and then replace us. Or if they don't want to do that, they can use the desktop app and start, seeding content to one another and consume content that way. So the benefit of your content being on Odyssey is that we're supporting it just by us being built on top of that blockchain. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Right. And the other point that I alluded to before.
I say yes, but if you asked me to read and explain it, I could never. So okay. I'm kind of lying, but I kind of get it.
Well,
no, it's not your fault, Julian. It's me. It's not you. It's me.
It could be me. There's a tendency sometimes that people that are really passionate about something, they go so deep, and then they're using a whole bunch of terminology. No, you're good. Hey, one simple way to look at it is this: if you can't wrap your head around the blockchain, just know that it's really good, and that Odyssey is built upon decentralized technology, which would always protect you. You would always retain, be the owner of your content. You'd always retain that ability to do what you want with your content. And let's say if we abandon our values and totally go rogue, your content will still be alive somewhere. So in many respects, so you know how there's a lot of platforms that come out every other week and they all have the same kind of slogan, like we're going to destroy, we're free speech, there's no censorship, blah 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 blah. The reasons why Odyssey we don't really talk about censorship and all of those kinds of things is because it's not really a concern for people that are using Odyssey so far, because our technology stack that we've been built upon is resistant to all of that. So we could filter out from Odyssey illegal content, or let's say if we went rogue, content that we didn't like or something like this. But as a creator, you're always protected.
I think that's great. So you're saying you don't want to market it as a free speech platform. It definitely is. I would say it is. I mean, I don't know. I guess I haven't poked around enough where I've been in any dark crevices where I've seen anything that I think that wouldn't be acceptable anywhere else.
Yeah, I think with media platforms, they're inherently supposed to be free speech. So we need to. So that's something we don't champion. We don't run with that slogan versus some of the newer conservative products that have come out onto the market, simply because we already are that. It's like, does Porsche market their cars every time they come out with a new one and say, hey, we're a really fast car? No, people just know that's one of the inherent qualities of their cars. So in the same way, like with Odyssey, it's like things like protection and freedom and free speech and all of those, things. It's inherent. It's inherent in the platform.
I like that. I like that you did. I like that I might need to steal that energy a little bit. Like, maybe not market myself so hard. It just, here's Eliza. This is it. This is the whole thing. So Julian, I know I'm being a little nosy here. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. What's the beef between Odyssey and Rumble? I've sent some beef. It wasn't there like a lawsuit or something. I don't even like, what's the scoop there? If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine.
No, it's fine. Firstly, Rumble sucks. But I mean, I wish them well. I think, I mean, look, it's just, what is this? It's not alt tech. It's just big media. Everything they are purporting to fight is a lie. You go to their website, it's plastered with, Fox TV personalities and conservative social media influencers and so forth. They're saying that they're going to be an alternative to YouTube. No, it's just a smaller website. Add to that, it's an echo chamber. I wish them well, though. I think if they want to be an echo chamber, that's totally fine. With Odyssey, we're trying to create an open platform and actually be the future for this new generation of users, right? Their demographic is boomers and old people, and that's fine. But it's just too hard not to troll them because they're so ridiculous.
But Odyssey does a little trolling in general. And I love that about the platform. I feel like Odyssey so when the Joe Rogan situation was going down, which the one of a trillion Joe Rogan situations, but this latest one with they super tried to cancel him for fill in the blank. There was one of the hardest media pushes have you ever seen anything like that? Anybody try, the corporate press trying to destroy someone? I've literally never seen anything like it before. But Rumble offered Joe Rogan, I don't want to misquote it, 111 or $100 million, whatever.
Yeah.
And then Odyssey came out, trolled a little bit, offered Joe Rogan, I forget, but it was like a number that doesn't exist.
Gazillion, 100 gazillion. Yeah. That's more than a million. That's the main point.
Right. So Odyssey does a little bit of trolling. I like that. Do you think in the case of Rumble, and I don't want to stay here for too long because I know it's not your platform, but do you think in their case that perhaps they wanted to be a little bit more like Odyssey, and realistically, whomever went over is who went over? Like, don't you think that they would have left it open to both sides? Sure, they lean more right now. But I mean, when they first launched out, I mean, I don't consider Glenn Greenwald or Bridget Phetasy or, Tulsi Gabbard super conservative. I mean, I guess I consider them nuanced, a little bit politically homeless sometimes, but so do you think that Rumble pandered to the right, or do you think it just, I'm just trying to figure out what they maybe did wrong.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to, I don't want to assume they did anything wrong first and foremost, because, what I would have done differently could very well be their business model and what they want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's very clear. There's no debate that they pandered to a specific demographic, a specific political dichotomy. And that's fine. I mean, it clearly has given them results. And in those actions where they went to spend the large sums of money to acquire Glenn Greenwald and Tulsi and that kind of thing, I think there's a point to be made where it shows you what their priorities are versus ours. right? Even when they came out with this PR stunt to offer Joe $100 million, if we had that kind of liquid cash, you see the type of money that we spend creators on. Idris TV, for example, a young Black guy that's just doing general, weekly videos, live streaming on Odyssey. It's not a big name. Or Sophie and Joe, just boyfriend and girlfriend, just making funny videos in the vein of old H3H3. They're going and paying for personalities that don't necessarily create a whole bunch of content, but will essentially give them Twitter headlines. So you can see who's actually creative focused and focused on the spirit of independent content creation versus, trying to just inflate certain already established media personalities. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to be clear, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do, and that's fine. But you can't come out and herald that you are going to be the replacement of YouTube, or that you're you're a YouTube alternative and are the future of it, when you are essentially just propping up established right-wing personalities, influencers and such. Even I wouldn't consider Glenn right-wing either. But again, Glenn's already got an established platform and that kind of thing. We are about independent content creation and being an independent media platform in the vein of what YouTube used to be. Rumble is about big media. It is not fighting big tech. It is not alt tech. It is a centralized website, and it's big media. It's bankrolled by big media personalities and sponsors, right? But I wish them well. I just want to make that clear.
So moving back to censorship, what exactly would Odyssey remove, or do you just leave everything up? How does that go for Odyssey?
Hey, we take down illegal content. In addition to that, if you're using the Odyssey app from the App Store or soon to be Android Store, or Play Store rather, there may be content that is hidden from those applications. And that's not us censoring anything, that's those companies censoring. So we have to abide by their terms and conditions. But Odyssey itself, we really only take down illegal content. And illegal content is essentially what it violates our terms of service. We don't have ambiguous terms or anything like that, which would be deemed very gray or debatable.
That's good. Yeah, that's always been one of my biggest complaints, of course, with dealing with legacy tech. It's like terms of service are so gray. They're constantly changing. And it's like, how the heck can we keep up? It's like, I don't know what I can say from 1 minute to next, or what I can even type out from 1 minute to next. I almost feel within the span of like an hour or two, Twitter will actually make a word like kind of bannable. I get nervous sometimes. I really do. I really do. Cause I love using some of these platforms for now. I mean, to me, they're like old relic dinosaurs, but yeah, it's nice to kind of get in a little bit at the death rattle of these whole relic old dinosaurs, the legacy tech. But, it does scare me a little that it's like, okay, well, if I use this word, or if I speak about one thing, I'm scared I'm going to lose everything, So that's why I said I want to build my house on rock, not on sand. So how is it difficult to navigate? So something that might be illegal in one country and not illegal in America or anywhere else, is that difficult to navigate as a platform, or do you just...
That's a great question, because what you don't want to do is just comply with any government, quote unquote, government affiliated body. So we get requests from all kinds of different governments. And, they could be a not-for-profit, but they've had some kind of support from the government. And what they're actually asking for the removal of isn't a violation of any laws in their country, any local laws, I mean, and it's not a violation for our terms of service. So we always do our due diligence before we get these kinds of requests. We don't just take down anything. But let's say, for example, in America, we know that child abuse content is illegal. And I use that as an example because you're very, vocal about these things.
To say it lightly.
Yeah.
It's all I talk about, Julian. It's a shock that have I brought it up yet today? Don't worry, I will. Not in this conversation, maybe, but yeah.
No, it's fine. But like, a request will come through, we'll validate it, and then it's gone. And because of the blockchain nature as well, if we are removing a piece of content that our users are unhappy with, they are more than welcome to go and run the blockchain and host that illegal content themselves and deal with the potential repercussions of that. Yeah, but for the most part, with illegal content, we just want to make sure that it's the claims are valid before we go and action any takedown of content.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of my big deals with on the subject of child sexual abuse material, so my big issue right along has been that legacy tech will prioritize the removal of speech and ideas and thoughts, just honest debate while neglecting and moving very slowly to remove human rights violations that are already in progress and being monetized. I mean, that's been my big, I guess, probably where I really earned my stripes out here, was just sort of championing, like, why are we removing speech, jokes, memes, thoughts? It just didn't make sense to me, whilst being so slow to remove child sexual abuse material. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Exactly.
We would make reports, and the platforms, I think Twitter just added a report. Okay, so they had a separate reporting page, I guess. It was like you had to type it in. It was like a total labyrinth to even report child sexual abuse material. They finally, the other day, I mean, this is just the other day, added a button while reporting, but you still have to kind of go through a few steps to get to where you can report child sexual abuse material. And then we have to wait for the platforms to remove it.
Yeah.
It just really drives me crazy. It's always driven me crazy, because they will remove different words that aren't illegal, that aren't violent, words aren't violence. And you would think that they would prioritize the removal of these horrific violent acts against children. But, I don't just think about those things. I think about, terrorist beheadings, violence against animals. There's some pretty vile stuff out there on the internet, and I think the bigger the Odyssey will get, probably the more this will become an issue.
You raise really good points. Like, it is crazy that these big platforms will take so much time to remove that kind of content. There's a preoccupation with them making sure that the political speech, like which you alluded to, is taken care of first and foremost. Even with alt tech well, I shouldn't say alt tech, but some of these newer, gimmicky platforms that come out every other week, they're all about like the free speech, but God forbid if you're Abiy Martin and you're talking about wars in the Middle East and that sort of thing, because work. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
I think what we're going to see, this is just, if I had to, if I was a betting woman, I think that everyone is so sick of this pasteurized, controlled narrative. I mean, we're already seeing the corporate media, their whole shtick is done. It's dead. The ashes. We are watching the death rattle of the corporate media right now in our lifetime, right now at this very moment. I think legacy tech is right behind them. And I just think anything that's where you're forced to see that one thing, to hear that one narrative, to hear that one specific viewpoint, will no longer be acceptable. We want to hear it all. I would rather make my own decision. That's why a platform like Odyssey is so important, because I know that whomever's going to be on there, I'm going to be getting their exact idea, whatever that content creator really thinks in that moment, not put through a filter. And they are also not self-censoring.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Yeah. Julian, is that these content creators for so long have been self-censoring.
Yeah.
And even myself, I have been self-censoring since I've been doing interviews. For instance, when I went on Timcast. It was really the first really big interview like of that size I had ever done. I was pretty new on the scene when I went on, and I was so scared because Tim Pool beforehand had told me like, look, we really can't talk about can't talk about human trafficking. We're going to have to do it on timcast.com, but behind the paywall, because he was scared he was going to lose his channel.
Right.
Just imagine as a survivor, because that's all I know. The truth is, Julian, that's really all I know. I mean, I know other things about like makeup and stuff, but generally speaking, but I was scared. I didn't want to get Tim Pool's channel taken down off of YouTube because I said the wrong thing about human trafficking. Just imagine it's self-censoring that hard. And now it gets worse and worse and worse. You can't say anything about elections. You can't say anything about health issues,
You're hitting on some really, really important themes here. And it goes beyond just political speech too. Like, look at comedy creators, right? They've had to self-censor too, to create more PG oriented content versus more edgier type of content, right? If you look at other verticals like history channels, they aren't able to talk about certain things related to the war. If you look at if you look at new age channels like astrology channels, right? They can't talk about predictions pertaining to the election or COVID either. It affects a whole bunch of different verticals, right? It's not just the political space. So this topic of like what you can and what you can't say out of fear is a very significant issue, and I think. I feel honored that like you have trust in Odyssey that we are addressing this the right way, because I think we are.
Well, it scares me, Julian, because it really scares me. I think at the root of it for me, probably because the sort of self-censoring and being careful and not feeling free reminds me of being trafficked. It reminds me of being abused. I don't want to be quiet. If I feel something, if I want to say something, and I'm pretty chill normally. I don't like try to offend people. I mean, I know what I mean by that is if someone has specific pronouns, I'm not going to intentionally not use their specific pronouns. Of course I would, that's just for as far as I'm concerned, that's polite. But I would hate to lose my Twitter that I've worked so hard to speak to different survivors and do different things and to raise awareness and to post missing kids because I misgendered someone. That scares me. I would never do something like that on purpose. But what it reminds me of is that self-censoring component makes me feel like I'm in an abusive relationship. I don't like that. So I'm just grateful that you guys are out there. What do you think the future of Odyssey is? What would you like to see ideally in the future for Odyssey?
We're looking, based on what you last said, because that was so powerful, it took me back a bit, but
don't
maybe
cry.
we can edit this bit out. No, I'm not crying. I just wanted to edit it out. Can I just say this one thing that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I go right in.
What you're saying is so important, like, because you mentioned like an abusive relationship. There are creators, right, that want to show you how to tattoo or how to like do body hacks and things like that. They don't even feel like they can, like, they're being penalized for just their lifestyle choices by these big platforms, right? So it's like you want to be on our platform, okay? You have no more, like, we need to take away some of your agency. Like that's almost what it feels like. You can't say this, you can't do that. It's insane. At TikTok, right? What they used to do is just essentially shadow ban you if you were a part of some kind of LGBT community, or you had some kind of quote unquote diverse worldview or lifestyle. Lifestyle is probably a better choice. So I just wanted to tell you that personally, because it's insane. Like,
I've never thought about that before, but I think in this conversation, I'm like really sitting here, really thinking about it. I think that's why I like that. I think it's that self-censorship that reminds me of being in an abusive relationship. And I just don't freaking like it. And I know not everybody will relate to that, but we shouldn't live in a world where we're just self-censoring all the time, especially not creators. There's a reason you call it creators. This is where artists should go to be able to sing about whatever. I was thinking the other day, Julian, I was like, wow, the world is so chaotic right now. I hope we get some really, truly amazing art out of this time.
I agree. It's at its core, they've all been relegated to just advertising platforms, right? These legacy media platforms and these quote unquote alt tech platforms, they're essentially trying to be advertising platforms too. That's when you get into this position where it's like, okay, you're not allowed to talk about body hacking or
what's body hacking? I'm not hit to this.
I forget his name. Essentially people, that are interested in experimental body piercing, tattooing. It even extends to people that create their own vaccines. Now, I can't speak to the efficacy of it, but people are doing these kinds of things, and then it's freedom of expression right there. Like the whole point of Odyssey is to be a social media video platform. If we're telling you what you can and can't say and what you can do and what you can't do, like what are we doing here? Like that's not what we want to build here. We want to be as close to a public space as possible. So yeah, what you're saying here makes a whole lot of sense. It would be like being in an abusive relationship where you're like controlled and this kind of thing.
I just hate it. I just hate but it's going to trust me, it's going to reach a point. It will be the death of them. They dug their own grave with this censorship and the other nonsense that legacy tech companies pull, and we should have known when they kicked off Alex Jones, that was the test, and then since then it's just gone downhill. And I wasn't really out here. I wasn't in public yet when that was happening, but it just seems like that was pretty much the beginning of the end. I know it was happening prior, but that was really sort of the beginning and the end.
And I'd like to remind people because like a lot of people are familiar with the cases of creators that are political being affected. There is an excellent channel called Raka Raka. They're from Australia. They make all kinds of like parody videos and this sort of thing. Definitely one of the channels that helped make YouTube into what YouTube was. Like they deal with all kinds of, demonetization and censorship issues. As artists that have won awards, they can't even express themselves or create the art they want to create because of this policy. So like a lot of people mistake that this whole, issue around censorship and the topic of alt platforms, it's just to provide a safety net to conservative creators. But yeah, certainly there are platforms that are, focusing on that demographic, but Odyssey, we're looking at the whole spectrum, every single vertical, everyone is affected.
But that's the thing is that's why I'm like, yeah, if I have a survivor that needs to tell their story,
exactly.
I need to have a place where they can do it uncensored. I don't know what else to say. I think it's not just political at all. It affects all different types of people, activists, those who advocate for our world's most vulnerable, that cannot necessarily be heard, need platforms like Odyssey. So I'm just happy that you exist. I'm happy that you guys are doing well out here. So what's the future? Where would you like to see Odyssey in 5 years?
Okay. Huge question. I want to see more people like yourself on the platform, first of all.
Well, there's only one Eliza, Julian.
There's only one.
There's only one Eliza. Look, don't kid yourself.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean more people that are speaking up on that topic, because what you're doing is super important. And I get that you're like, it might feel like you're going up against Goliath, where YouTube doesn't support the type of content that you're releasing.
Well, Julian, I don't need YouTube. YouTube needs me. If the Elizas of the world, gross. I just referred to myself in the third person. But if new content creators, because I'm not that pressed on YouTube. Like I told people, my podcast is there. I'm not like I said, I'm not trying to build my house on sand. I'm trying to build my house on rock. To me, they're an old dead relic. So, but when I have the opportunity, once my podcast is big enough, I won't even have it on YouTube.
Right.
I'm already censoring myself too much for my liking. So YouTube needs me. I don't need YouTube. There are enough other options out there.
Yeah.
Maybe for other creators, they would feel that way. I don't feel that way. I feel like any platform needs me.
I hope a lot of creators start to see it the same way as you do, because they are essentially what keeps these platforms alive, for sure. But coming back to what you asked, like what do we see in Visage for Odyssey? We're trying to address a lot of the foundational issues. So just yesterday we rolled out some changes that would allow for better playback when live streaming. I don't think there is any platform on the market, an old platform that's innovated as much as we have in the past few weeks, or even the past year. But we're certainly iterating on just stability and addressing foundational issues. The Android app is something that people have been clamoring for a long time. Just like, if it's not out this week, it should be out next week. By the time your
podcast goes out,
should probably already be out. We're also looking at like more creator engagement specific tools to roll out. So what do I mean by that? It's like you're a channel and you're live streaming, well, you have custom stickers. We've got Odyssey. You like that?
I love it. Actually, I was going to ask you, my best friend's like, yo, why does your Odyssey have all this bling on it? I was like, I don't know, but I love it. I love the bling on my profile. I think it's so cute.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to be boring, and so it's little things like that, I think, really add to the.
It's the cutest. It's the cutest site of everybody. It's the cutest site. Hey, so you just got a big shout out, not you specifically as a person, but Odyssey just got a big shout out on Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh yeah. Today, or are you referring to the Majid?
I was talking about that.
The Majid one?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Majid is working with Odyssey because he believes in our tech stack. He believes in our values and that kind of thing. It's awesome. There's Majid, but also like they've got this creator program. So there's all these, it's real diverse, like in terms of all these like channels and their views and stuff like that. But yeah, Majid's awesome. Intense to work with.
Yeah, he's not. I'm sure he would be intense.
But I mean,
you should ask my little production team how intense I am to work with. I'm like a complete psychopath. But actually, I've pulled out a little bit lately. I think after the first one, but I was pretty intense. I have high expectations. I think I have like this is the thing about me, Julian. I think I have an Elon Musk budget and an Elon Musk mind, but in reality, I have negative $51 in my bank account. So, and my ideas are like, okay. So I start getting really, a little fooling myself. But it's kind of nice, Julian, because I like to be humbled sometimes too. And it's making me, I don't know. You know, what's funny? I've noticed doing interviews, I actually have way more respect for everyone who's interviewed me up until this point. It's way harder than I ever thought it would.
This point. Okay.
No, not until this point. I mean, when I started my podcast, then I was like, oh my gosh, interviewing people is really hard because you have to listen and think at the same time and think of what you're going to say. It's hard to, you have to think, it's just hard. So I felt a lot better. So I'm kind of glad don't have Elon's money or brain. Anyway, so long story short is,
I think it's important. Like, I think it just shows that you're really committed to your show. And it's you're like a lot of important people are coming onto your show and telling their stories. Like Tara Reid, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like out of respect for the guests that you do have so much concern for the production value and that kind of thing. At least,
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think I just have a vision, and I didn't want to half-ass it, Julian. I'm like sort of all or nothing.
yeah,
And so I'm going to try. I don't know if this is where my journey ends with this podcast, but I know I'm going to give it all I got for a year. And if it's not working after a year, then I'll reevaluate. But, I'm just so sick of corporate media. I'm sick of the government. I'm sick of the way that the corporate media and the government treats survivors. And I just wanted to go and give survivors an opportunity to speak and tell their story. But I also want to interview people that I'm really interested in, because I want to show different sides of my personality, because regardless of whether or not, if the person that I'm interviewing is a survivor. So like you and I had never talked about anything like that, but I'm interested in what you have going on, but I'm still a survivor. So folks can see me interact. And I think there is a little bit of hope there for people that are like, maybe wanting to do something on their own. They're like, oh, well, this survivor is like trying to do new things, and she's not scared to embarrass herself in front of everybody, the whole world. So, so maybe I can too. So it's kind of cool. It's like I'm, hitting different birds with one stone.
Yeah, but it's super important. I mean, is Rose going to come on your show?
She said yes. She said yes. And I'm really looking forward to talking to her. She's an interview I'd really like to do in person. There's some interviews I'd like to do in person. Originally, my original vision for this podcast, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think I have like endless budget, which is not the case. The original vision for this podcast was only to do it in person. Only to do in-person interviews. But the original vision, actually, this is something cool to talk to you about, because it would be good for Odyssey. The original vision was to interview survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, but also to interview convicted abusers as well. So, and those conversations would probably be pretty edgy. Just sort of unpack the crime to the best of my ability, and to see if maybe we can find some solutions. And if there were patterns, I don't know. I just really think that it would be really interesting to interview convicted abusers. But because of COVID, I don't know if that dream will ever become a reality. But what I was able to do was start this podcast now. And get it going. And we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes.
And we're always going to be here for you, right? Like, and I don't mean that as like just some empty statement. Even when you and I we had that phone conversation prior to this, and you were telling me about the Tara Reid episode and that kind of thing, like I really mean it. Like, wherever we can support you with your show, just have to let us know. We don't have
really
much money either, but maybe, well, not yet. But like, this is what we're about. We want to support like independent.
I need $1 million, Julian. That's actually why I asked you to come on. I need $1 million. So if you could just work that out, that would be great. Just imagine if I asked Jeremy Coffin for $1 million, he'd tell me to
he'd tell you to ask me.
Probably. Probably. He's great. He's a pretty funny guy. He's pretty interesting. I like him. So I don't fully understand. I thought that Jeremy Kaufman was the CEO of Odyssey, but now I understand. So you're the CEO of Odyssey. He's the CEO of Library Creator. I don't know how that works.
So like, I have tremendous appreciation and affection for Jeremy, because he's like he believed in my vision and didn't second guess me like any step of the way, and gave me a whole bunch of resources to create what I needed to create. When I was hired as a library employee, so I started as vice president at the company, and that's when we began building Odyssey. then I was promoted to Chief Marketing Officer. So Odyssey was a library Inc. product.
Just so folks, sorry, just to clarify, when we say library, we're not meaning like the book, like public library. We're talking about the library is spelled like LBRY, right? All caps, or am I crazy? Is it
No,
LBRY?
that's how it is. I've always complained about their naming convention. Like everything is called library. Jeremy was telling me it's like, oh, it was to keep things simple, but like I don't see how it made anything simple.
I think it's a cute name. I think it's cute.
Yeah, I didn't like the name, but I mean, it's hey, personal taste, right?
How did you come up with the name Odyssey?
Literally just standing in the shower, and I was thinking about like sounding out vowels, and then I was also thinking about like what would be something easy for my nieces to spell, because I don't want Odyssey just to be for boomers, right? Like I'm thinking about the Gen Z and all the future generations. I want this to be their platform. So even that TikTok generation of user, I want this to be their, I want Odyssey to be their new YouTube. Because, so I was thinking about, what would be easy to spell and this kind of thing. Also, brand colors and iconography, and it just seemed to fit. So, rolled with it.
Do you consider yourself a creative person, an analytical person, or both?
Yeah, I think both. Certainly more fair towards the creative side.
You don't have to be. You don't have to be either. You can be whatever you want to be.
I don't know. I was stumped for a minute. I was like trying to think, like, am I more analytical or am I more creative? I don't know.
That probably means you're a little bit of both. And then you might flop back and forth depending on what's, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily know. I think I'm almost completely creative. I think I don't possess, but I think to work in tech, you have to be somewhat analytical because there's a lot of precision and just stuff that, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but
your guess is as good as mine.
So one of my last, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Library Inc. is a different company from Odyssey. So we split the two companies out. So Jeremy was, in fact, the CEO for Odyssey while it was a library product. But when we split the two companies out, it made sense for me to just go on and as CEO, and I was effectively running Odyssey anyway. So, yeah.
That's good. So you're still working together a little, but not.
Nope. Jeremy and I we sometimes talk about like, I don't know. We were talking about like, we don't talk about work that much, and that's because we're two different businesses. Two different objectives. I mean, we catch up, but it's not about like business stuff. I caught up with him when I was in New York last week. But no, we don't really talk about work all that much.
Last question.
Yeah.
One of my last questions, unless I come up with another one. So you're from New Zealand.
I am from New Zealand. Yep.
And so right now you're in the United States. When was the last time that you were home? That long. When you have to think that long, he didn't go.
They keep on like, I mean, there's always some new issue that comes up which prevents me from returning home. June. But I believe in March, they are finally lifting the restrictions, which would allow me to go home. I've missed so many birthdays and Christmas and this kind of thing. So it's going to be good to go back home. But I'll only be home for like a month, and then I'm going to come back.
Okay, so you're here permanently.
I mean, I don't want to be, I mean, it just so, I shouldn't say permanently, but I'm here a lot of the time in Vegas.
So would you rather be in the United States or at home, or just visit home, or do you want to have enough money to go wherever you want to, whenever you want to?
I mean, I think from Vegas, you can pretty much just go wherever you want. It's so cheap to fly out from.
It is.
Housing is very cheap here as well. New Zealand,
Maybe I
You
need to move where you're at.
No, you got it. You have to go to the New Hampshire, right? The new Free State Project. That's
Yeah,
calling you. You got to get over there.
that would
Um,
be, yes and no. It's just kind of, yes, I do. Definitely support Free State. I think that they do great stuff. Free State is, and I have a couple friends that really decided this year, they're like, okay, we're going to move there. My issue is, I don't want to move to another place that's cold again, but
yeah.
if they secede a little, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I could see what that's their whole thing. They're trying to like, that's why it's the Free State Project. Um, yeah, it would be fun. It would be nice. I do have this like delusion of grandeur where I'll just be like sitting around a campfire with a bunch of bearded anarchists, living my best life.
Yeah.
But until then,
Having dinner with Dave Smith and Jeremy Kaufman and
yeah, Dave Smith is great. Yeah, Dave Smith is great. We met in Freedom Fest. We were both at Freedom Fest this last year, and I spoke there. He spoke there. He was on the main stage. I was on the pleb room. But Jeremy's really cool. He's really nice. He's a
yeah,
cool
there's
dude.
so
He's
many.
really cool to me.
You guys have a lot of they have a lot of festivals. I didn't even say you guys, like Pork
We
Fest.
do. Yes. Libertarians and anarchists, yeah, have a lot of festivals. I don't know what it is. And you know what's odd to me too is I don't get asked to speak anywhere else. Like it's not like CPAC hit me up. Not that it's not like I'm pressed to speak at CPAC or like TPSA or whatever other big festivals they have. I just, or I don't know what on the left happens. I wouldn't know. Um, but I don't get asked to speak anywhere except for, but like if it's, maybe that's the problem. Maybe if it's a bunch of anarchists sitting around a campfire, they want me to come speak, and that's it. But yeah, it's really interesting. But that's kind of how I got introduced to Odyssey. Was a lot of libertarians really enjoy the platform, and I think that always speaks to me. I'm always like, okay, if the libertarians are there, that means it's pretty, things aren't censored. And I always think that people with free speech platforms, and I know you're not identifying that way, but I'm just going to say it, or that are not so heavy handed on the censorship. How about that? Um, it's not that we want to say something that's going to be super offensive. It's not like we want to say things that are racist. That's what I'm saying.
I know.
Really, I don't want to say something that's not socially acceptable. I just want to have the freedom, I just want to have the freedom not to say something racist, because if I had the chance, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I technically could right now. I would just get banned from everything.
I mean, my high level, what I want is for, if you're a channel and if you're a creator, you have your channel, you have your forum where you post your content and people comment on that. I want you to have the flexibility to define the rules of what you permit and what you don't permit. To me, that is the ideal solution here, but we're working on it. It just takes time to put that together.
Like if somebody said something racist on my podcast, or a word that I thought was really racist, I would like to be the one to choose to whether or not I want that word out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's an ideal to figure out. Now, I'm not saying is that going to be the correct solution. I don't know, but I think we need to start with giving people that autonomy to work those things out for themselves.
Are you a libertarian? I don't even know what's the political scene like in New Zealand.
I don't have any political.
What's the political scene like in New Zealand? All I see is tyranny. So like all I see is like no guns and tyranny. So like help me sort that out.
You know what? I don't even know. I haven't been home in a long time. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know what the situation is like on there. I get information secondhand from my family. But even then it's not a whole great deal of information. But I'm not that political, and I think that's important, because I really don't want to get involved with like a cultural war, or like, some, like one of the criticisms that I brought forward to Jeremy is like a lot of these platforms, they're run by people that ought to be politicians, not running media companies. I need to make Odyssey a successful media company where people can come and get entertainment and that kind of thing. And I need to uphold the values of what social media is meant to be about. So yeah, I don't really like follow.
I think that's better. If you want to know the truth, I think that's better. I think not being, there are certain jobs, sort of yours and mine, where it helps to sort of just be kind of chill a little, even be willing to see all sides or whatever. I think that's really important. And I think for you, not really being judgmental or trying to, I don't know. I just get that vibe from you that you're not going to be super judgmental. Like you're going to let the Satanists do their thing on the platform. You're going to let this person do that person, I think I think that's what needs to be. And you know what? I would fight for those people to get a chance to have their own platforms,
Yeah. Like I'm a media and tech professional as well. like, I mean, you can really go deep into the different like political subjects, and I don't have the time to go deep.
Right.
But like I'm friends with people across the entire political spectrum, right?
I think it's great that you are not, that you're not hyper partisan. It's really not necessary for your job. And a lot of times when people are busy, they don't have time to focus on a lot of the political stuff anyway. And it wouldn't really help too much with Odyssey.
Yeah. I like to play my Nintendo Switch when I'm free. Or like just read. I mean, yeah, I'm not really following the politics.
What's living in Vegas like?
Right now, it's a little bit boring because I really want to go home.
So you're making it boring. It's not boring there. You're making it boring.
It could be. Yeah. I mean, beyond the strip, I've discovered some cool things to do. Some creators always fly down every now and then. I get to hang out with them, but I'm always traveling a lot. So I'm hardly in Vegas. Like every other week, I'm in a different city meeting somebody else. Jeremy and Tom were here for a while too. So we hung out. Eliza was here for a while too. And that was great. So yeah, at this point, I just need to get back home because I've missed Christmas and a whole bunch of birthdays. And then I'll be back in Vegas again soon after that. So it's such a convenient spot for me to be in.
Freedom Fest this year is going to be in Las Vegas. Freedom,
really?
And that would be a great spot for Odyssey to have a booth and a presence there. Just throwing that out there. And it's libertarian. Yeah, it's huge libertarian conference. It's probably the biggest one. It's absolutely massive. So definitely think about. I'll probably be there. I don't want to say anything before the ink is dry. But I hope you're there while I'm there and we can hang out
for sure.
Oh gosh, summer in Vegas though sounds so freaking hot.
Oh, is it during the summer?
Yes, it's like right in the middle.
I like to leave Vegas during the summer because it's just unbearable for me.
Yeah, it's pretty hot. It's pretty hot, but it's still awesome. I mean, I would pay anything to be in Vegas as of today, right now, drove here in freezing rain. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I really, really appreciate it. If folks are interested in learning more about Odyssey, following you, shout out everything, and let people know where they can find you, Odyssey, all that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, by the way. It was awesome. Odyssey.com, ODYSEE.com. If you're on iOS, you can download the app for your phone. It will soon be coming to iPad. Just we don't have the iPad app ready. By the time this episode drops, we'll probably be in the Play Store, so you can find us there too. If you want to follow me individually, I'm at JVL Chandra, CHANDRA on Twitter, and Odyssey on Twitter is at Odyssey Team. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so freaking much. I had a blast talking to you. You're hilarious. You're awesome. I love everybody over at Odyssey Team. Shout out to Drew. Drew is freaking awesome. Yeah, and I hope to have you back sometime. Well, listen, in a year from now, we could do. Well, I don't want to wait that long to have you back on the podcast. Hopefully, we'll have you back before then. But a year from now, we'll listen back to this one and see where the podcast is, where it's grown. Hopefully, it grew a lot on Odyssey, and we'll also see how Odyssey is doing.
Awesome.
So, thank you so much, Julian. I love you so much. Have a great freaking day, and thank you to everybody that joined and listened to this podcast. If you're not following me on Twitter, which would be weird. But if you're not following me on Twitter, follow me at Eliza Bleu, at ELIZABLEU on Twitter. And then my locals community, eliza.locals.com. If you want to support my podcast, it would be awesome if you signed up for my locals community. I blog in there. I post news stories in there. I do live streams in there. I do all types of things in there. That's really how I have funded my podcast up until this point. Also, my Twitter tip jar is on. So if you want to throw me a couple bucks, I accept Bitcoin. I accept library coin notes. I accept it all. Look, you could send me a freaking, bag of lunch and I'll accept it. Please support my podcast. Please support my podcast, at least until I got sponsors. So please follow me, support me, and definitely follow me on Odyssey.